Welcome to our In Focus discussion tonight on Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. During the month of May of each year, communities across the country celebrate and honor the heritage of Asian Americans and Pacific Islander Americans. The past year has been tough for these communities, particularly because of the disproportionate impact of COVID-19, as well as the spike in crime stemming from hateful rhetoric. Our guests tonight will talk about the different layers of their identity, the barriers they still face daily, and why representation and visibility are so important in schools, the workplace, elected positions, and more. Kicking off our conversation first is Sara Jones, president of InclusionPro. Sara, thanks so much for being here tonight and squeezing us in among all of your speaking engagements.
Thanks, Rosie. It's great to be here.
Sara, at your own comfort level, tell us about your background and who you are. You've got an incredible and unique story about how adoption impacted your life.
Thanks, Rosie. So I've been able to share my story really widely, and I am of Asian descent, but I was adopted to Utah when I was 3 years old. And when I arrived in America, I came to America with a really large tattoo on my left forearm, which was quite a mystery to my adoptive parents. And a couple of years ago, I was able to find my birth family using this tattoo. I posted it on social media, and a few days later, someone contacted me. And having spent my entire life in Utah, it was something that I would never have expected. And I was able to take my family back to Korea a couple of years ago to meet my two brothers and my uncle and my aunt. Unfortunately, my birth father passed away 10 years ago. I will say that I'm so much more emotionally connected to Korea than before, and so it really had such an impact on me and my family.
Wow, I wish we had more time to hear about your story because it's so compelling, but shameless plug, if you want to hear more about Sara's story, it's actually online and you can search her up. As May is Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, everyone is celebrating and reflecting in different ways. I'd like to hear about your feelings and experiences. What does this month mean to you?
Well, it's probably no surprise that growing up and being raised in a white family, I did not have very much exposure to Asian culture. And so oftentimes, Asian adoptees aren't always thought of when it comes to Asian culture and what this day means, even though it's been around since literally the year that I was adopted. And so most of my communities I'm in, I'm one of the only Asians, and professionally one of the only women. And so it can be a very isolating experience. I am thrilled that there is more exposure, more education now, and more understanding of what Asian experiences are, and more knowledge actually of how to help transracial adoptees better understand and embrace their culture. And you can imagine it can be a very confusing, complex upbringing when you don't have those racial mirrors around you and those role models.
Let's expand on that a little bit more. As a transracial adoptee, you've been very open about sharing your personal experience and raising awareness about this subject. So what would you like our viewers to know about the transracial adoptee experience?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people don't realize how complex the emotions can be, right? You love your adoptive family, but you have maybe feelings of loss, feelings of grief and sorrow, disconnected. You might be wondering where you fit in and finding that acceptance. And also childhood trauma. Researchers are becoming much more aware that it is real, it is impactful, and when children are separated from their families of origin, there are real impacts for children. And so I've been able to talk about what are these impacts and that it's so important to give children safe emotional spaces as they're navigating these complexities. Unfortunately, most people don't know that transracial adoptees experience anxiety, depression, and suicide at 4 times the rate of the normal population. And so these are things that people are becoming much more aware about with the adoptee experience.
I feel like we could dive into that whole subject on its own. Maybe we will in the future. Now, you are the president of InclusionPro, which is a company focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So how should businesses think about inclusion in the workplace, and what are some best leadership practices?
One of the biggest shifts that I've seen over this past year and a half is leaders being much more willing to really jump in and really lead diversity, equity, inclusion efforts in their companies. It has been amazing to see this transformation. As difficult as this past year has been, leaders are stepping up and doing the work. I think the other really big awareness, aha moment that has come to leaders' minds is that we cannot keep our societal events and our workplaces completely separate anymore. There is this younger generation that is savvy, that cares, that is very socially conscious. And they're our workforce, and our future is here now. And so leaders have become much more aware that we have got to be better prepared on how to lead diverse teams, and they're trying to find solutions for that.
Well said. Sarah, we've got about 30 seconds left. I want to squeeze this question in. How can we better support Asians and Pacific Islanders in the workplace and in the community?
I would encourage everyone to be thoughtful about the stereotypes that are applied to Asians. Oftentimes it's so easy to assume Asians are doing fine, but if you look at the data, Asians are highly underrepresented in leadership. I mean, we are almost 7% of the population. Asian women on corporate boards only hold 1% of board seats. And so follow the data and make sure you're not just assuming that Asians are making it into leadership, making it into positions, career positions. Be very thoughtful and intentional about seeing a wide range of talent.
Well said. You've been hearing from Sara Jones, president of InclusionPro. Sarah, we are honored to have you part of this conversation tonight. Thank you so much for making time to be here.
Thanks for having me, Rosie.
We'll be right back.